It's the Brad and John Show.
It is, and to give a reference, this is the 26th of December, the day after Christmas. This is C Block, which starts around 7:40. We do that for the people who are listening in the future on the podcast or on the video cast on YouTube. Our YouTube our YouTube channel is bjshow.video. Okay, John, I've got a question for you.
I'm ready.
These things come up recently. Trump's floating all these trial balloons. The Panama Canal. Have you heard this thing about the Panama Canal?
Yeah, I have heard, and I know very little about this. I did hear that Jimmy Carter is going to be rolled out to endorse the plan, though.
First off, going way back when, Jimmy Carter essentially gave which we built. It's the cost of a lot of blood and treasure. A lot of Americans died making the Panama Canal. And we did it for our own interests, essentially for our trade and also for security, be able to go from one coast to the other coast. Because if you're on the East Coast before the Panama Canal, you want to go to the West Coast, you have to go all the way down to the tip of South America, come back up, and South America, Mexico, and then you're on the West Coast. Okay. He wants to take it back, and essentially he's saying that the Panamanians are ripping off people, especially the Americans, and as much as he claims, and I did look this up, and supposedly this is correct, that sometimes they charge $500,000 to go through the canal, okay? But here's what's interesting, and I'm going to throw this out to the global climate change folks. Maybe they can explain this to me. Maybe, John, you can explain this to me. One of the reasons the Panamanians are saying, well, the reason we're charging more because it's harder to get ships through the canal because the water level is low.
Now, that's a good rationale.
Well, no, hold on a minute now. Think about that for a minute. What do they say is going to happen to our coastline? That our coastline...
The ice caps are going to melt, right?
And that they already claim that the water level is coming up, okay? And yet I've made on several occasions, well, if that's the case, why are these rich people buying beachfront property? Because of the fact, if it's true that the beachfront is going to essentially be gone because with global climate change, with the sea level is going to come back up, how is the water level low in the Panama Canal? Think about that for a minute. Does that make any sense to you?
No, but I do think you should follow a website that's tantamount to the Lake Mead one where you could just follow the water level, Brad, and then you could obsessively check that one too.
You're making fun of me, John.
No, I'm just saying, surely there's got to be a thing that has Panama. I don't mean to undercut your point here, Brad, but yeah, that certainly, but this is just them backwards rationalizing why they're charging so much, right?
Well, but I've heard other experts say, well, the water level's low in the Panama Canal. Okay, and once again, we have the situation where on one side of the Panama Canal, we have the Atlantic Ocean, and on the other side of the Panama Canal, we have the Pacific Ocean, okay? If the ocean levels are rising, how come they're going down in Panama? It just doesn't make any sense. And I'm going I heard that, and I thought to myself, okay, I got to research this a little. And I haven't found an answer to it. It's to the point where it's like, okay, it doesn't make any sense. You would think it would, that the canal, if anything, the canal would have more water in it, because if the water on both sides, because the purpose of the Panama Canal is to get essentially ships and boats and all sorts of different vessels from one side of Panama, which is the Atlantic Ocean, to the other side, which is the Pacific, and vice versa. This doesn't make sense to me. I'm sorry. Didn't. Okay. I talked about that. Okay.
Do you know that Panama by Van Halen, by the way, is not about the country, but is about cars?
Yes, I did know that.
I didn't know that until, Brad, I probably didn't know that until like a year ago. And I one day had one of those things, where you hear a song and you're like, I thought, wow, it's really weird that David Lee Roth was singing about, why would he sing about Panama? And I loved that song, in first grade. And then I Googled it and I found out that a reporter criticized him because the reporter's like, all you guys sing about is partying and women and cars. And apparently David Lee Roth was like, hey, we've never sung about cars. And then so he wrote Panama because that's what he called one of his cars, I guess.
Right. And I believe it was a red car, if I'm not mistaken. It was a red Ferrari or something like that. Okay. Last week, the EPA granted a special carve-out of the law to California. And the carve-out of the law is California is now able to essentially say, once 2035 comes around, essentially 10 years from next month, when actually in a week, it'll be, a matter of fact, today, a week from today, it'll be 2025. So 10 years from next Thursday, or next Wednesday, actually it's the 1st, they will no longer allow any internal combustion engine cars, ICE cars, to be sold in California. And I'm thinking to myself, how long do you think this is going to last till Trump gets in? You know?
About 2 hours.
Yes. I mean, and
like, that's just, so is this just symbolic, Brad?
Well, see, what doesn't make any sense to me, and I'm not trying to say I know people, but I know people who work in the electric industry, and they all tell me the same thing. They go, we have no idea where all this electricity is coming from. They all say the same thing. They say, when we talked about the government wants to get rid of gas stoves and gas ovens and gas furnaces and gas dryers and things like that. And even to the point where, I guess when I was still doing the BS show with Shelley, we had Caleb Hunter on, who runs Extreme Electrical. He runs an electrical contracting company, and he has, from time to time, they have meetings with Ameren. And Ameren comes right out and says, we don't know where the power's coming from. We have no idea. Yeah. Because of the fact that all of a sudden, even in the St. Louis area, we talked about this a couple weeks ago, that he said in certain parts of the area, matter of fact, he actually mentioned Richmond Heights, which you won't go. He said there's not enough power in that area. If everybody in Richmond Heights switched from a gas furnace and a gas stove and a gas whatever they had to electric, that the grid couldn't handle it in some of those older areas, because there's not enough infrastructure. Because if you go back in history, anybody who's bought an old house, you go down in the basement and you see this little 50 amp box that's in the basement, because once upon a time, that's all you needed. You needed a 50 amp circuit breaker box or a fuse box in the old days. Well, now, pretty much any house that's built, I think most of the codes require you have a 200 amp box. He talks about the fact that these people are putting in, their car chargers in their garage. They have to upgrade to like a dual 200 amp box or a 320 amp service. It's not there. So, and I'll give you a perfect example. Tuesday morning, I left St. Louis at 5 o'clock in the morning. I drove down to my son's house in Pensacola, Florida. I spent 11 hours. I drove from I don't know how many miles it is. It was like 800 miles, something like that. I drove from St. Louis to Pensacola. I made one fuel stop, someplace in southern Mississippi. I don't even remember the name of the town. I think it might have been West Point, Mississippi. I was in and out of the gas station, went into the bathroom, bought myself something to eat real quick, fueled up the car, and got back on the road. I was in and out of there in 9 minutes, okay? I was able to make that trip, and the vehicle I was driving, I rented a car, actually I rented a truck, and it had, when I topped off the tank, on the dashboard it said I had 520-mile range. So I only fueled once, okay? I made that trip in 11 hours, okay? That trip would have taken me 2 days to make in an electric car, because of the fact that most of your electric cars, probably the largest range you have in an electric car right now is like 300, 350, maybe even 400 miles. I would have had to stop, sit someplace for a while, and fuel, charge up, then make another stop before I got down, probably before someplace in Alabama, have to stop, and the problem is that I take 55 south, go 155 across the Mississippi down the Boot Heel, and then take a bunch of different roads through Jackson, Tennessee, and then up on US 45. US 45 goes pretty much north and south from Tennessee all the way down to Mobile, Alabama. It's a not a 4-lane interstate, but it's a 4-lane divided highway in Tennessee and in Mississippi, When you get to Alabama, it's a 2-lane little windy road. Every 30 miles, there is a Dollar General store, but there's no gas stations. If there is a gas station, it's like a 2-pumper kind of gas station. How in the world are those people going to charge their vehicles? I mean, they barely have a damn gas station. And once again, if you all of a sudden say, as of 2035, no electric cars or no gas cars can be sold in the state of California, to me, I just don't envision it. To me, it would be like saying, hey, as of 2026, there's going to be no shootings in downtown St. Louis. There's going to be no crime in the city. And we declare that. There's going to be no crime, no carjackings. Yeah,
you just declare it so.
No robberies, nothing. And it's just, and people go like, yeah, that's not going to happen. You know what I mean? I mean, it just doesn't make any sense.
Brad, to cite your law of unintended consequences, don't you think that this will encourage some people in California to drive across state lines and buy a car and Nevada,
Yeah,
and come back.
but the problem's going to be is that California has such onerous laws on vehicles to the point where they will make it impossible for you to register the car. You can't
I
get
get what you're
plates
saying.
in.
So in other words, they would add as many stumbling blocks as they can.
Yes. I mean, already we had the situation where with the medium duty trucks, and me being a small business person, there are a lot of small business people that complain about this. Essentially, the way the laws work right now, that if you buy a car that passes EPA standards, let's say you buy a 2010 car that passes EPA standards in 2010, you're grandfathered in. And as long as you keep that car in good working order in the St. Louis area, it has to pass emissions. As long as it keeps passing emissions, you can drive that car forever. But what they did was in the medium duty diesel trucks in California, which a lot of these guys who are contractors, small dump trucks, essentially, people who are hauling, like 20-foot van kind of trucks, furniture delivery kind of trucks, they made them illegal. And you had to sell them. You had to get rid of them. And for a while, there were guys buying these trucks up, mostly in pretty decent shape because, once again, one of the nice things about buying a California car, no rust. You don't have any of the rust belt problems you have, like, our truck. Even the trucks rust out as well, too. Frames rust and stuff like that. So there were guys making a killing on buying these cars cheap, or rather trucks, in California, then reselling them in other parts of the country because you couldn't register them anymore in California. And the EPA essentially allowed California to get away with that because normally, like I said, if you buy a certified car today, which passes emission standards, and let's say you move out to Warren County, doesn't make any difference. Lincoln County, Warren County doesn't have any pollution standards as far as the cars is concerned. If you live out there, you only have to have a safety inspection. So they've changed the rules of the game. And I'm going like, this is ridiculous. And the point of it is, the trip I made, which I was able to go down and back. Essentially, I went down, got into Pensacola about 4:45, had dinner with my son and his girlfriend, left yesterday morning about 5 o'clock in the morning, was back in St. Louis, by 5, 6 o'clock in the evening. There's no way I could have made that trip in an electric car. I mean, it would have taken me 3 days, maybe even 4 days. It's just frustrating.
So but if you're an environmentalist type, let's say you're at Washington University and you're a climate change specialist, isn't your argument, Brad, well, in 10 years, we have time if the government truly invests and if the private sector anticipates this demand, that gives us plenty of time for the Brad Hildebrands of the world. Let's go outside of California. That gives us plenty of time for there to be so many more electric charging stations to be built between St. Louis and Pensacola. And Brad, yes, it might take 4 days to get there now, but in 3 years, it will only take 3 years, 3 days, et cetera, et cetera. And as government continues to invest in a cleaner future, we'll have more and more charging stations.
But my point being in the St. Louis area, if you go charge your car and you say, I've got a zero emissions vehicle. Yes, but that power comes from the Labadie power plant, which is coal. It comes from the Portage de Sioux plant, which is coal. Matter of fact, someone sent me this. I think it might have been the smartest woman in the world sent me a list of the EPA put out the 20 most polluting power plants in the country. And Labadie was like number 11. So,
yeah, I know it's a pretty good score, right? We should be proud of that.
So if you think you're running your Tesla and you're sitting like, oh my God, my Tesla's zero emissions. Yeah, right. Now, it's zero emissions if you put a solar farm in your backyard and you charge your Tesla that way. Okay, I'm with you. But how many people? First off, know many people have a electric car? Do you know many people?
I have no idea.
I mean, you have no friends that have an electric car?
Oh, dude, that I know?
Yeah.
I'm not going to be friends with somebody that has an electric car. I know people that I have acquaintances. I have one, I guess I would call a loose acquaintance who has a Tesla. But isn't the point of buying a Tesla to flex? Like, you're not buying, or at least the people that I know, you're not buying a Tesla because you care about the environment. You're buying a Tesla because your credit score is good enough. You want to say, I could buy a Tesla.
Well, I don't know. I don't know if you're saying it's like in the old days it was like driving a BMW. I drive a Beamer.
Yeah, I mean it's a status thing, and it's a subtle flex of your. Not only do I have the money for this, but I'm better than you because I care about the earth. And also, Brad, I didn't tie this together until you just mentioned it, but a while back in A Block you mentioned that St. Louis Public Radio is featuring diaper donations, and then you're able to make it down to Florida with only one stop. I think we can connect the dots there, Brad.
John, let me bring that up.
Yeah.
Think about that for a minute. diaper donations, talking about NPR, our St. Louis Public Radio, being anti-environment. In the old days, when I was a kid, and my brother was 8 years younger than me, we used to use cloth diapers, and we used to wash them.
Which is so disgusting. Oh, my God.
We use cloth diapers. But now, when you have kids, what do you do with the diapers? You put them in the trash, and they go to a landfill. Okay, so
Brad, okay, let me ask you a question. Would you, if you had kids today in 2025, would you use cloth diapers?
I'd use the new Tesla rechargeable diapers, which essentially
That's a good answer, Brad.
You just plug them in, and you don't have to worry about it. It electronically, gets rid of the waste product, electronically gets rid of the pee and the poop, and you just have to keep it charged every night. And there's nothing, no landfill or anything like that. That's what I'd do, John. See?
Good answer, Brad. That's a great answer. Hey, how were the Depends on the way down to Pensacola, though?
John, even though I'm 89, I don't have that problem yet. So I use the word yet. Okay, I'm going to end the show on sort of a weird, strange end. We're coming up to the end here. Shelley Barr, who's my old cohort in crime, we used to do a BS show on the other station for like 10 years. Shelley's having some very major surgery. Matter of fact, literally, probably at this very moment, she's being wheeled into the operating room. And everybody just think some positive thoughts for Shelley. And, if you're kind of person, maybe say a prayer or something like that. But so I leave it on that note right there.
And I love you, Shelley. We all love you.
John, we're done. And we're done a little bit. This is the first. We're done a little bit early. We've got 27 seconds. Should I say one more time that Justin Sparks? No, I won't do that.
Or we could tie a bow on this. You could manage to say once again 17 more times in 17 seconds.
Twice again, 3 times again, once, twice, 3
times. A made it. And
John,
Brad, we can send donations to Sparks for Speaker too. You could just text them at 314-280-2880, right?
No, 314-280-8880. That's my cell phone.
Oh, 8880. Sorry,
Yeah.
that shows how often I use the phone.
I didn't get it. You know what I forgot to talk about? I forgot about my phone going off when I was in Mississippi yesterday, and it was on Christmas Day, and my Amber Alert thing goes off, and I thought it was an Amber Alert, but it was actually for an escaped criminal. I'm thinking to myself, okay, escape from jail on Christmas Day, let him go for a day and get him on Monday, okay? Or let him go for a couple of days.
I'm with you, Brad.
Just let the guy go.
Thanks for checking out the Brad and John Show podcast. This segment of the show is brought to you by John Combest's book, Stalking, Harassment, Internet Trolling, A Guide to Recovering and Rebuilding After Online Attacks. It's a great reference if you've ever been the unfortunate target of a social media attack. It's available on Amazon. Just search John Combest. That's Combest, John Combest, and the book will show up in your search results. Now it's time for another segment of the Brad and John Show. Can you handle it?